Hi everyone, this week's topic is chakras. I'm going to be talking about a little bit about how past lives help us open up the healing codes for our chakras and how we use those healing codes in continued self-development in the future. This is an important and interesting topic because this is a really brand new one for me. If you look on the page and scroll down, I'll add the link. Well, I'll add the link. I'm actually planning on adding them to my website. It's going to be like a continued healing page, and I'm going to add all the chakra codes, and I'm going to add the links to the codes. But what I'm not going to add is this explanation here that I'm going to talk about with the group. So what I have come to discover is that our past lives they're filtered into our chakras by a filing system. This filing system our chakras are like energetic filing systems, and they're sorted by theme. So the root chakra's theme is usually some of the most traumatic stuff we've experienced. Is our physical connection here to earth. It's our connection to community, tribe, society, so the people around us. And if you look at human history, you really see where and why we would have a lot of trauma there, because this is a very physical world, and it has been a very violent world in our past, you know, in times of conquering other villages, places, times of pretty much religious warfare. We've definitely had a lot of situations and instances where we have done some really crazy violent things to our fellow brothers and sisters. So that is a root chakra storage. And anything that falls under that would be like seeing really traumatic stuff, like seeing your family burned to death, really intensely written in patterns, like somebody who would wake up at 6 and work all day, and the main theme there is fear and safety. So we have all of the lives bring us to a place of fear. All of the lives really push that idea of fear in us. So what they're trying to point out is everything related to the idea of fear, everything that triggers fear, everything that reminds you of fear, everything that instills fear is the limiting belief. And they're pulling us to the fact that everything, that all those limiting beliefs can be counteracted if we truly believe that we are safe. If we allow ourselves to release all those fears, if we allow ourselves to be focused in the safe, in the now, then we can now combat the lives represented in the fear. We can now combat the thinking processes and the belief systems all settled in that fear. So the code to that is, I am safe. Now, again, I'm going to attach the things at the bottom of the group, but they are like repeated mantras, and they have to do with safety. So you would say, again, the repeated mantra, I am safe, I am, and the biggest thing too that we have to understand, that when we're relieving these past lives and when we're releasing these blocks and these fears, is that we have to say, we have to make sure that we truly believe it. Because believing it is really the release. And this is why we have to do the digging. We go really deep into these lives so that you could feel it, you could understand it, and then you believe, and then now you can release. So it's, you know, it really has to do with recognition, understanding that that part of you is still suffering based on those decisions. And then you have to take accountability for those decisions, and you have to remind yourself now that you are safe. And that is the code word there. I am safe. I don't need to keep suffering this life. I don't need to keep reliving this trauma. I am now safe. So the next chakra that we talk about is the sacral chakra. Now this is interesting because these are a little bit different than like chakra themes, although they are themes. It's not something that I was really aware of, even though, like I said, I read people's chakras all the time. So I'm very aware of the theme, but I was not aware of these codes. And the code in the sacral chakra is shame. Everything that blocks your sacral chakra does so by making you feel shameful. And this is true in, and this part might not be family friendly, so if you want to keep this part to yourself, it might help. You know, you don't want to be listening to it like on speaker and your kids listen in on this stuff, maybe, I don't know, depends your relationship, I guess. But The sacral chakra is all about shame. Shame, everything associated with shame blocks the sacral chakra. If you look back at our life and our habits and our ways of, in humanity, really, everything that we are now trying to fight was because we were told something based off of shame. You can't love people, that's shameful. You can't have sexual relations with certain people, it's shameful. You can't mix with certain religions, it's shameful. These are all limiting, self-destructive behaviors. Essentially, we have these are all destroying humanity, right? So every of these lives that have come up with, you know, and it has to do with sex too, because it's the sacral chakra, so it has to do with our reproductive organs. And shame is a huge block to finances and financial success, because it also has to do with creation. The sacral chakra is more than just sex. It has to do with creativity, motion, movement, understanding. It has to do with active decisions. It has to do with balance of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And it has to do with, most of these are blocked by shame, especially if we've had some kind of life where our body has been intruded without permission. And whether you're male or female in this life, I guarantee you've likely had a past life where that is true to you, and your limits, your energetic body or your physical body was intruded upon by somebody else. And the reason being that we have this idea of shame. So many people work under this radar of shame. So they feel like if they want to do something or they want to have sexual activity, they do so and they steal it, and then they just kind of run away from the situation and hope to get away from it. And in reality, like if we were to look at utopia of this, then people would be able to express themselves freely and love whoever they choose, and it would be mutual and consensual, and we would all be allowing people to experience themselves energetically that way without shame. And that's exactly what happens on Soul Side. So it's really interesting. It's not like a big orgy or something. It's not like that at all. It's just saying that there is no shame associated with who it is you have any kind of relationship with. And here on earth, we find that it always happens. You know, we have arranged marriages, we have forced marriages, we have abusive relationships, we have rape, we have sexual abuse, we have so many freaking things, human trafficking, we have child abduction, we have pedophilia, like there is so much, and that's all associated around this block of shame. Now, if somebody intrudes their energy onto you, if somebody intrudes your energy, you do feel shameful because you feel like you must have somehow done this. And this is the victim mentality. We say like it must somehow be our fault. And we have to understand that it's definitely not our fault. It's just this idea that things flow around shame. So the unlocking keyword to this is I am free. And this is so important because so many people don't understand this. When you unlock your true inner freedom, when you allow yourself to express yourself however it is you please, like I said, as long as it's consensual, as long as it's respectful. My gosh, there was just a huge hawk that just flew right by my window. Gorgeous. Awesome. All right, so if you allow yourself to express yourself properly and express your sacral chakra, and if you really just allow yourself to feel your divine feminine and your divine masculine, if you allow yourself out of the shame, if you allow yourself the freedom to be whoever the heck you want to be without worrying about what other people think and without limiting other people, without, let's see, I'm just looking at my notes here, without judgment. See, you know, like, of course the freedom, what blocks freedom is also judgment. So we have to understand that releasing judgment is also a necessary thing. So, you know, if we're judging people based on who they love or their actions or what they're doing, that is obviously not something we're trying to do. That is blocking our freedom to choose. And, you know, like I said, freedom is positive choice. It's not like freedom to kill people. It's not like that at all. It's freedom to choose. And this, I have to tell people, this is one of the main reasons we have so much suffering too on earth, because we have people who feel like they are not worthy of happiness. They are not worthy of freedom. They are not worthy of this beautiful energy that comes with discovering themselves and loving themselves fully and loving whoever they choose fully. You know, it's been a really big issue that we're trying to combat more and more and more. And honestly, this is this has a lot to do with gender equality. This has a lot to do with transsexuals. This has a lot to do with people who are questioning the way we view sexuality. The reason they are brought here to this earth is because we need to come to a place where we are neutral and we say, it doesn't matter whatever you want to be, just be it. It's fine. And this is the lesson that we're trying to teach humanity, that you are allowed to be exactly who you want to be. The hawk just went by again. As long as you are doing it in a free way, without harming others. And it's definitely not harming for yourself to be expressive of the soul. So it's a beautiful thing. And if you have a problem with this, it's because you have had trauma. So if you have a problem expressing your energy, if you have a problem expressing your sexuality, if you have a problem in your confidence with your body or expressing your sexuality, then you definitely have a block to abundance. And you have to note that. You have to understand that freedom of expression and that freedom of being accepting of affection or sex or whatever it is going to benefit in terms of creating prosperity and in terms of unlocking the creative there, the sacral chakra, the abundance available in that area. Now, being prosperous has to do obviously with being in full alignment, and that is the system of chakras. So it's just pointing out little things that could be blocking you and how to freely work through those. So again, I am free is the code there for the sacral chakra. Next we move to the solar plexus being around the belly. And this has a lot to do with willpower. It has a lot to do with what we eat, with our habits. Obviously our habits being willpower. Everything, in this topic is represented by willpower. And many people here, this is where we have the idea of victimize. If you are suffering, if somebody here is stuck in victimization, they will feel like they have no control over their body, their food, their energy level, their health, their life. They let all that go. And then they kind of project. They say, well, I can't because. If you feel like you can't, you're always going to find excuses. So I can't because my parents. I can't because my childhood. I can't because I was poor. I can't because I'm homeless. And yes, I understand completely. And I would never sit here and say it's not a valid reason to struggle. But if you want change, you have to say, I can because I'm willing. So that's really the thing there is the code would be I am in charge. I am responsible. I understand that my past was my past, but now I'm in charge. I'm in charge of every decision I make. I'm in charge of everything that's going to better my future. I'm in charge of my prosperity. I'm in charge of my health. I'm in charge of what I eat. I'm in charge of what I say. And I'm in charge of myself completely and fully. And when you take accountability for the good, you also take accountability for the bad. And people need to understand this, because if we are taking accountability for the good and we are leaving out all the crap we did that was bad, then we are not taking accountability. We are not in charge. We are in deflection and we are in denial. You can't say, well, I'm in charge of everything I've done that's great, and I'll just keep doing that without owning that you've made mistakes. Now, we are human. We have all literally made mistakes. So you cannot go off and say, deny your mistakes. Your mistakes are lessons. You need to be able to embrace the lessons and the decisions that you made to get you here, and you need to be able to work through them. So again, being in charge. I am in charge of everything that has happened in my life, the good and the bad. And when we talked about the empath video that I shared, if you haven't watched that, definitely watch that. There's a lot of empaths in the group, so it's definitely helpful. And if you aren't an empath, you likely have a child who's an empath, because we're in this huge shift. Humanity's on this huge shift, and we need to move out of this place that we're in. So a lot of gifted people have come down to earth. So a lot of those gifts are empaths, which is really just a certain soul evolution. It's on their way to id. So it means that empaths have walked away from ego and are moving into id, is the collective, is the consciousness. So I am in charge. Very, very important. What I was going to say is, if you watch the video on the empaths, you will see that even abusive people in our lives do teach us a lesson, because they are teaching us how to protect ourselves, how to set up proper energetic barriers and boundaries, and how to defend and put ourselves first, because empaths, healers, givers are always allowing themselves to be abused, and we have to separate the two. Just because you're a healer, just because you're kind, just because you're compassionate, does not at all mean that everybody has the ability to step all over you. And it's something that we naturally do all the time. So until we learn, we allow it because we believe it's necessary. We have this idea of sacrifice. Now, sacrifice is never the proper way to go about anything. And sacrifice is just like, it's just kind of like it's a side effect of an untrained healer. So if you feel like you're doing things out of sacrifice, if you feel like people are taking advantage of you, if you feel like you're sacrificing your own happiness or energy, then you need to kind of turn that around and say, I'm not a wounded healer. I am a strong healer. I'm going to do the right version of this. I am going to help millions. I'm not going to sacrifice myself. It is not necessary. And you develop your own gifts and you understand how your gifts work. So then the next one we work to is the heart. Now the heart has, usually what we have here is it's blocked by grief and guilt, and guilt being the major one. Usually we grieve intensely because we have guilt. So if you are holding on to something really intensely, it is usually because we feel some kind of guilt there still. And sometimes this guilt is totally unjustified. Like we'll say something crazy like, you know, your grandmother might have died of cancer, and you might be like, oh my gosh, I wish I had known, so I could have been there 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for that last 7 weeks of her life. Well, that's not really realistic, and it wouldn't have changed anything. We have to kind of let go of that idea that we can somehow alter reality to go back in time. And the way that we work through this really is always just be the best version of yourself. And the way that we are the best version of ourselves is we tell ourselves, I am worthy. I'm worthy of healing. I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of compassion. I'm worthy of the time it takes to take care of myself so that I could be stronger for everybody else. And in that way, I always give everybody my 100% because I'm always at 100% because I've always taken care of myself. Now, everybody always asks this, what's the difference between selfishness and self-love? And the difference is you're not harming anybody in self-love, but you're definitely harming yourself if you are being selfish, because you are hurting people you love and you're hurting yourself too. So there's definitely a difference. In self-love, you're taking care of yourself and others, but you're just making sure your vessel is full before you pour. So it's important because we are much stronger when we make sure our vessel is full first, when we take care of ourselves and we listen to our soul. Now, self-love pretty much means that nobody else can intrude in your boundaries. Nobody else can disrespect you. Nobody else is going to challenge you. Nobody else is going to be an aggressor or an oppressor. Nobody else is going to boss you around and demand your time. Nobody else is going to demand your sacrifice, because you have come to a place where you understand you are worthy. You are beyond that. You are beyond those kinds of relationships and connections. So it is a time of evolution, and it does take a lot of learning, but the code there would be I am worthy. So we always have to remind ourselves, and that's exactly what I am worthy means. It means I am worthy of the time it takes to make sure that I am full before I pour. And this is huge for healers, because we are always, we get a penny, we give two. We are always giving way more than what we have, and we deplete ourselves very quickly. And, it's so important because we're going into such a shift, and we really need healers to be very powerful. We need them to be at their best. We need them to step up. We need them to be strong. We need them to know these things. So I'm really hoping that this group continues to grow and more people get, this information. Actually, the reason why this information is only in this group is because it's going to be a book, but I have to add to it and go through it more. But because there's a lot more I can add. I could talk about this for days and days, but I have to kind of limit it to this. So what we find too, like I said, is what we find these past lives stuck in these areas. So the past lives to solar plexus we struggle with addiction, we struggle with bad choices, and those bad choices really block us, or we give away our power and those people choose bad things for us. For example, they might choose to sell us, or they might choose to abuse us, or they might choose to take advantage of us because we've given away our power. So that's what blocks there, especially addiction. Addiction is a huge block to the solar plexus because that's something that usually follows you life after life. It's a really engraved pattern, being because you willingly chose to abuse your body. So, and then it continues that energetic abuse cycle until you can break it, and it's just a very hard one to break. I always said it must be one of the hardest things to suffer addiction. I just, my father was an addict and a drug dealer when I was little, and it put us in a lot of danger, but I always kind of just looked at him and was like, that must be so hard to do. And I think it's, the reason why, like they say, you either learn to be like people, or you either learn to be not, you either learn to be the exact opposite, because it was so traumatizing of an experience. Heart. The heart, when, we have guilt, we always feel guilty about the people we love passing, or then we have survivor's guilt, which that one's hard too. I had a life, let me explain this one. I had a life block in the chakra, the heart chakra, where I had a neighbor with kids, and her husband died at war, and she had 5 kids, and they were very poor and they were struggling, and I was alone, and I was by myself. I had money. My son was much older. He was taking care of me, and I was totally blind to her suffering in that life until it was almost too late. I came to her after her youngest child had died. She couldn't make enough milk. She couldn't feed herself. She was so stressed out. She was mourning. She was in such bad health and condition, trying to sacrifice for these children as a single parent, that I had only been aware to her suffering. That this lady, I'm talking about my neighbor, I mean, like I could hit her door with my door. We were right across from each other. So I felt horrible guilt. I found out that that older woman was me, and I could have been helping the whole time. And so when the child died, I became aware of her suffering, and then I started helping her with the kids. And I had horrible guilt for that. And I apologized in this life for my past life, transgressions. And I think that we have to understand that forgiveness and guilt work both ways. When we can release our guilt, we can also release others of that guilt. When we can forgive ourselves, forgiving ourselves is just as important as forgiving others. If you cannot forgive others for the role they played in the lives, then you also cannot forgive yourself. It is a connected thing. If you cannot forgive and release, then you cannot release yourself. So we have to understand the power of forgiveness goes both ways. It is not just to release somebody else of their actions. It is really freedom for yourself. So again, understanding these codes really brings us to a place of deep release and healing. So I am worthy is always the unlocker of the heart. We have to understand that this works for so many levels, but we have to truly believe it, and then we have to follow the actions through. We have to truly act on it. It's not just knowing we are worthy, it's acting on it. Now, if you look at, I'll do that at the end. So the throat chakra silence is a block. And the one that I've seen, throat chakra is not speaking up. And this is really intense because a lot of spiritual healers and workers don't speak up. They are terrified because honestly, let me tell you, me and my husband talk about this all the time. You have somebody like Hitler who goes into power, nobody questions him, nobody challenges his authority, nobody says, well, this guy could be bad, until it's too late, until millions have died. You have somebody spiritual going up against people and saying, maybe I can help. Look at all their haters. It's so absolutely crazy to me. It's like, you have to understand that there's a lot of friction when it comes to highly evolved souls stepping up and taking their place or position to help people along. And the reason being is because we are in a very dark place across the world. So we have people's demons kind of coming out forward and bringing these people down because they're fearful. They're so stuck in this pain, this trauma. We're so limited here on earth. We're so low in our vibration that they see these people step up, and everybody attacks. Religions attacks, Christians attacks, atheists attacks. Like, they just all attack. And it's pretty crazy to me because these are people that could change the world. We need more healing. We need more understanding. We need more connection to source. But people get destroyed. And so we are fearful. We are reacting out of our limited traits, which is silence and guilt and victimization and shame and fear. We cannot come out. We do not speak up. We do not make change. We are blocked. And the only systems that thrive are systems working in victimization, shame, fear, silence, and guilt. Think about it. The reason why people can take charge, the reason why these horrible people take office or take charge or lead the country or run mass genocides is because it's so easy for them to work in that energy, because we have so much of that energy here on earth. And the people who come out as healers don't have enough followers. They don't have enough people sticking up for them. They don't have enough people courageous enough to speak up. And it can be really, really hard. This is one of the major blocks to our world right now, is that silence. The silence is deafening. And Martin Luther King said it best himself, and I can't quote him exactly, but it was, your silence is just as bad as defending the enemy. And it is so true, and it is so important. Our voice is an incredibly powerful tool for healing. And if you just look at somebody like Martin Luther King, you see what his voice alone did for a whole country, fighting for a world. I'm sure there are people around the world who knows who Martin Luther King is for what he did in terms of standing up for equal rights. And your voice is very powerful. And if you're sitting in silence, then you're a part of the problem. So it's important that you speak up through the heart. You speak how you feel. You speak in defense of others. You speak in defense of those being judged, victimized, being put down, disrespected, or hated on. And that's all I tell people now. It's hard to know sometimes when it's appropriate to speak up for somebody, and that is true. Because we might be like, well, did they deserve that? I mean, are they bad people? I'm not really sure. But there's a difference. You know, when somebody's attacking somebody, when somebody's using hatred, aggression, anger, violence on somebody, then that is never okay. I can't really think of a reason that would be okay. So it's okay to stand up and say, you know, it's not okay. Now, the unlocking thing is, I speak change. I am the change. That's really part of this whole system here, is that we have to be courageous enough to say, my words matter. My words are change. My words have the power to create change. I am that power. And we need to take that. We need to take that and accept it, and we need to really push it. And that is an amazing tool to have. Like, when we realize how powerful our voice is, we can create so much change from that power. So darkness, the third eye. The third eye is blocked by darkness. It is almost like a fear, but it is different. It is our inability to see. And this is so connected to so many things. Our inability to see because of this limited life we live in, this limited structure, our density here. It has to do with our being blocked, our traumas, our fears. It has to do with, you know, why we can't see. So if we see the darkness, so it's kind of like saying that when we are blocked, we see only the bad first, and this keeps us blocked. So somebody who is blocked or disconnected here in this place is only going to see the bad out of everything. And like I said, all of these are interconnected. It's an interconnected system. So if you are functioning out of victimization, then you see how everything is everybody else's fault. You see how everything is everybody else's fault. Now, that is not true, but you're feeding your belief system. And your belief system is a limiting belief system. So the way to unlock yourself from that is to see how everything is your responsibility. Now you change your perspective, you change your vision, and now you've unlocked another code. You've been to the place where you see all. You see the good and the bad. You see how everything is your responsibility, therefore you see how to fix it. You can see the dark because the dark means that you have work to do. We all have work to do. You can now bring light to the dark because you saw the dark. So it's an important and valuable thing to learn. And like I said, this goes with all of them. You know, I see that I speak the change. I see that I am worthy. I see that I can create change. I see that I am in charge. I see that I am free. I see that I am safe. And when we have unlocked that kind of vision of everything, where we can see the good and the bad, we can now see clearer. We can see ourselves as who we really are. if we are seeing out of blocked versions of ourselves, and we are seeing out of guilt, if we're seeing out of victimization, if we're seeing out of shame, if we're seeing out of fear, this is exactly what people call poor self-esteem. We have this weird deformed version of ourselves where we focus so much on the physical, where we are very hateful for ourselves, we are very mean to ourselves, we are very horrible. You know, we'll look at ourselves in the mirror and we might be like, oh, you're fat, you're ugly, you're this, you're that. This is where that comes from. We are so blocked in our energy, and we are working on so many negative systems, negative programs from our past lives that run in fear, shame, victimization, guilt, silence, darkness, that we can now see ourselves and only see ourselves in that version. So we have to unlock this healing before we can transform ourselves, and before we can say, I am not that kind of person, and I can walk away from that vision of myself. I can change that vision of myself. I can speak that change. I can be worthy of change. I am change. I am in charge. I am free, and I am safe. So again, like I said, it's almost like this all over healing code, but you truly have to believe it. So when we see all, the next step is understanding we are all. This is the last unlocking code on the crown chakra. I am all. And the reason being that everything that separates us destroys us. Everything that separates us lowers our vibration, makes us feel alone, makes us feel depressed, makes us feel secluded, makes us feel like we're at this by ourselves on our on our own path of kind of self-destructiveness. Really, if we are disconnected from source, if we're disconnected from our collective, our soul group, our family, then we are starving at soul level. So it is never a healthy place to be. We have to understand that we are all. We are connected to all. We're connected to our higher selves, our soul group, our gods, goddesses, our planets, our dimensions. We are connected to all. And this means that we are not judgmental of any of it. We are accepting of everything. So this means, you can be whoever you choose to be, but you better be accepting of who others choose to be. Now, this is not like, people who are aggressive and killing people. Like I said, that would be part of the separation. That's the negative aspect. The negative aspect being the limiting belief system. I can't read my notes, but it's the limited belief system that keeps us separated. So anything that keeps you separated is actually just self-destructive behavior. So if anything, if your belief system believes that whites are amazing and everybody else is horrible, you're separating yourself from the collective, you're destroying yourself, you're weakening your soul, you're becoming a target, you're being manipulated. If you believe that your religion is the only religion and it's the purest religion and everybody else's religion is false, you're separating yourself, you're functioning out of ego, you think that you have all the answers, and you are separating yourself from the collective, from gods, from everybody, and therefore you are being manipulated. You're being manipulated by whoever's running that religion. If you believe that certain people of the world are allowed certain powers because they are powerful or have money, again, you are under this false belief system that money runs the world and that money should be the only respected thing, and therefore you're being manipulated by those who have money. So it's really about understanding that we are all, and nobody has power over us because we are all. So any system, now this brings me to my last point. If you look at your life, if you look at Earth, you're going to find that there is a bunch of crap. Oh, hatred. That's what it says. So that's the negative. So hatred, anything that separates us would be fueled by hatred. That's what my note said. And that makes total sense. If you look at your life, if you look at the country, if you look at everybody who's ever tried to take advantage of somebody and hurt people, they do so by fueling on their negative aspects on the negative side of the chart, which include hatred, your blindness, silence, your guilt, your victimization, your shame, and your fear. They feed on that. They feed on that and they limit us. They feed on that because it means they can control us. So if we essentially have come to a place of unlocking ourselves, unlocking our lives, a place of alignment, of understanding the codes, of really truly believing in them, then we are not able to be tricked. We are not able to be manipulated. We can now be open and healing. We can now be functional at soul level in the physical. We can now release these codes that have made us manipulatable, or made us pawns in this current life. So, and that's what our past lives do. Our past lives are layered programs that help us find a certain level of freedom here. You know, we have to connect to our soul self. We have these lessons to learn that we can overcome them. You know, we look at that mountain and we think, oh, it's so huge, I don't know if I could ever handle that. And then we just start walking, and one day we wake up and realize we're at the top of that mountain. We realize that by taking it day by day and step by step, we've somehow made it to the top of that mountain. We now know we are capable. We now know we are able. Now, when I talk about these freedoms and unlocking codes, I don't mean that like we don't need some kind of government or system of not control, but some kind of system of government is what I say. Because if we didn't have, you know, if we didn't have some kind of system of government, we would be thriving off of chaos and disorder, and that is the equal and opposite side, and that is the darkness, and that is exactly what we're trying to avoid. So we always need some kind of system of management, and it's not a control thing. And that's the worst part, is that right now we have a system of management that thrives on ego and that thrives on abusing people. So we have a system of management that thrives off this negative aspect of our fears, pretty much, with the hatred, darkness, silence, guilt, victimization, shame, and fear. So we have that negative aspect. Now, ideally, we would have more people stepping into their healing, and more people being able to offer this through the kindness, the compassion, the all-knowing, all the positive aspects that we are going through. And we need to also understand that even soul level side has a grand council being a system of order, and it's not a system of control. It's just a system of order to protect people who are trying to do good. And because we cannot control how souls are birthed, and like I said, we will always have the darkness. We will always have souls that are thriving on disorder and chaos. That is who they are. That is how they are born. So if they're being born that way, then the best thing we can do is keep them with each other, so they are not hurting people who are not thriving in that energy. So essentially, it's just like saying, like, if you want to plant something, the dirt belongs here and the seeds go in it and then we sprout. You know, it's not really better or worse. It's just saying that, like, the dirt is here and the plant is here. You can't put the dirt here and expect the plant to grow. You know, the dirt doesn't just float around. It's just a system of order. It's not like a system of judgment, and I want to make that really clear. So Grand Council has many jobs, but one of their jobs is just to try to protect Earth of this negative energy. Essentially, when we ascend, so ascension means that all of Earth finally comes into a place of knowing, and we lift our own vibration enough to come into a mutual, I call it, it's almost like a place of neutrality, where our soul is functioning fully and our physical body is functioning fully and we are fully aware. That is like our goal here. If we can awaken to that particular purpose, then we can disconnect ourselves from the equal and opposite. So what happens is we have to keep them there. So it's like an infinity symbol. It looks like this, you know, the figure 8 infinity symbol. I've explained this before in a previous video. So this is like this is the higher vibrations, and then it goes through the lower vibrations, and then we have a barrier. The protective barrier is because we are still trying to filter Earth. We are still trying to rid the Earth of the negative energy, so we have to be somewhat connected. Now, when we are in a place of perfect neutrality, we are now functioning vessel on our own. So we are cycling our own energy, so we can separate ourselves. So we are just more protected. It just gives us a little bit more freedom and a little bit more security. But they still exist. They just exist on their own. So it's not that we're killing anybody off. It's like we're trying to function at a place of neutrality and not worry about constant intruders. But we can only separate ourselves once we've done the filtration system. So that's part of every planet or star's development, especially ones that take incarnations. Earth is a dimensional planet and it's a physical planet. So again, I know that's confusing, but that's actually explained in my book. If you have my book, or if you don't have it yet, you might find it interesting. I definitely go into detail more about it in the book. And the book is Spiritual Development with the New England Psychic Medium. So these chakras, again, these are themes that are found in the chakras, and these themes go through many of our lives. And if we have lives stuck in these chakras, then they are what's causing us harm. So like I said, the belief system is so important. This is why we have to go in and kind of pull the life out, because we have to talk about why it relates to you. We have to talk about the evidence. You know, you have this pattern because of this, and then, you know, that's when the people can be like, oh, well, I definitely believe that because I have that pattern still, so I can say I acknowledge that, I accept that, I understand now. So if you really want these positive codes to work for you without knowing what the past lives were, you really truly have to believe in this energy here. And I mean, it's kind of like a limited thing, because essentially, let me explain it this way. If you've never felt twin flame love, then you don't know what you're missing. You can have plenty of other loving relationships. You can have soulmates. You can have people you love. You can have people you've had lifetimes with. And that is your max. That is your max emotion. That is your max sense. Until you've had the max, which would be a twin flame connection. And then, you know, then you see, wow, I see why nothing else ever worked. I see what people mean. I see that. I feel that. I know the difference now. But if you were here and never experienced that, you would never know the difference. You can be very comfortable here. So this is the thing about understanding, like, you know, we don't truly understand being connected to the collective. We truly don't understand loving all, being a part of all, until we have lived a life in segregation, in hatred, with separation. Those are the lives that make us truly, truly, truly appreciate the fact that we are all one. The fact that we should respect each other. The fact that our life is just as worthy of another life. Because if you think about it, that is the lesson there. When I see slavery, when I see these past lives with these slaves that are so hurt and tormented, their biggest issue is not just that they were taken from their family, abused, held captive, is that somebody could look at them and say that their life was a lesser value than their own. And these people sometimes turn around and teach that lesson on a new flock, and then they turn around and teach the lesson on a different flock, and it goes on and on and on until we have understood and fully encompassed the true value that we are all valuable, we are all connected, we are all worthy, we are all equal. And so we truly don't understand that unless we've lived that life and really can grasp that idea. Now, I do have to mention too that we have, I don't know if I did a video on indigo children. Somebody can let me know if I did or didn't, but most of our soul groups only learn through physical experience, because we are very physical beings, and this is part of our physical experience. So we can always have this idea of understanding, but we don't know unless we physically worked through it. So this is why we have so many lives. So we're trying to work out of this. We're trying to morph this. We're trying to make this push along a lot faster, because we have a lot of new souls on Earth right now, and it's almost like we don't want to wait for you to destroy your life and put it back together before you realize that it's not okay. So this is part of the code system, you know, understanding that, understanding this might help people align faster and not have to go through all of that pain or trauma. They can just simply understand and accept. So we're trying to create that life for them now. We're trying to create a world where this is all easier to do, where people are more accepting, more loving, more compassionate, more open, and not functioning out of ego. We are really, really pushing for this right now at this moment in 2019. It's really about alignment. And we're hoping that eventually these people come into a world that's already settled, that's less aggressive, that's more open, that's more woke. But The interesting thing about indigo souls is indigo souls are a science experiment of Nihals. Nihals are very rebellious souls that like to break rules, that like to change things and switch things up. They are kind of the rebels of society. They definitely don't like fitting into norms. They don't like conforming. They don't like the government. They don't like structure that tells people what to do. They really do love challenging. I just need a sip of water, sorry. They really do love challenging the way that we do things and challenging our structural norms. So, of course, the Nihals would come in and say, I don't like the way these souls have to learn 1,000 lives. So we're going to challenge that. And they have experimented and created indigo children. Now, indigo children are the only soul that I have seen that can come to Earth, and they don't essentially need experience. What they need is to stay. They are so sensitive to Earth's energy that many times they don't even want to be here. They hate it because it's horrible to them. These are people who we have very, very many times labeled autistic. Not all, but many times. Sometimes they're so low on the spectrum that they live whole lives and we never catch it. We never catch on. It's just a heightened sensitivity. They just it's really, really very mind-blowing to me because time and time again I've seen it and just been like floored by it until I physically had a reading with one, because you know many of them are children, so children don't come to me for work, but I do reports for parents for their children. So a Nihal parent would have had to bring in their indigo and say, read. So as much as I knew, I didn't physically contact a soul up until recently where I had this beautiful experience and I could really learn more about them. So and they don't all have to be on the spectrum or autistic. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they're super highly sensitive kids to the point where it could cause a lot of problems for them. And their issue is that instead of seeing one thing, they see a million things. They see energy. Instead of seeing a face, they see the million faces. They see energy. So we have a million faces. We have a million things. Like, this is something that I have developed over thousands of years here on Earth. I am a super ancient soul, and I don't need to incarnate anymore. I come here because I am part of this shift to help move humanity forward and awaken masses. So that is my mission. And I just went to my reading. Actually, I had a reading. Somebody asked me to do a trade, and I thought, why not? So I went to a reading Friday, and usually people cannot read me, and I had an amazing experience. And she pretty much was like, oh, so you're just here to change the world and try to eradicate homelessness and poverty and feed everybody? And I was like, yep, no big deal. Just, you know, just a little mission I'm on. And she was like, that's a really big mission. I was like, yeah, you know, it's sometimes I'm just like, I'm only one person. But anyway, it's definitely a big mission, and she saw that in the reading, and I thought it was so funny. We laughed about it. So we have these Nihals who are super highly sensitive, and their children, the indigos. Now these are soul level children. Like, it's like I said, they're an experiment of the Nihals. They are a creation of the Nihals. So they were even born differently. Usually we're born of a creator. They were kind of like composed by the Nihal soul group in a way. They're trying to make the perfect soul to fit into our human body the first time, so it doesn't need all these lives, because on other planets you can fully incarnate and be fine because the energy is less dense, so we still connect, so we learn our lessons, we experience the planets, we move on. So the indigos are really interesting because their experience, their heightened sensitivity allows them to connect more, but it also means that they're very distracted. And it also means that they don't really need the lessons, but what they do need is patience and understanding. So we need to alter the way we teach them because they are just different. And essentially they are supposed to be humanity's answer to better connection through the physical body and evolution. So they are people who can master things that we have had a hard time mastering. There are people who can do, you know, some of these amazing souls are in college. I just read a story about one in college at 6 years old because they have mastered the human experience of knowledge while still being connected. It's pretty amazing. And what happens is when we connect to the subconscious that way, when we connect to our database, our soul database, we just have all this knowledge. So it's easier for us to get things done. We are aware, we are connected, we are understanding. And this is only if we can find ways to manage our other senses so they're not too overwhelming. So some things that they do is like they like to wear headphones so that they block out other noises so that they can focus. And they like to be comfortable, so they might like weighted blankets, or they might like that pressure, that sensory. It makes them feel safe because they're picking up too much of their outer energy. So it's like a blanket, a quilt, a protector from picking up too much outside energy. So it's pretty fascinating to me to see like how that soul structure is coming down into earth and trying to be that example, that solution. But for the most part, the rest of us do fully function off of experience and firsthand experience. And that means that we have to do it the hard way. We have to go through it. That's just the way our souls work. Now, I want to talk a little bit about a post I saw the other day because, like I said, this group is really good for fighting these false belief systems. And this person, I don't get it. This person was talking about, oh, you know, we're transcending our 3D reality, so you're going to lose your 3D memory and you're going to start moving into 5D memory. And this idea that we leave the 3D experience and now are connected to 5D only is really ridiculous. Our physical body, our hands, our feet, our body are 3D. We are in a 3D world. We live here, and we have to have both. We have to not just sacrifice our 3D experience for the sake of connection. Like I've said time and time again, the whole point is that we're trying to find the perfect balance between both. So we do not sacrifice our 3D experience for our 5D experience. We are a conductor of both. So I wanted to note that and share that information. And there is one more thing that I can't really remember. Oh, I will be doing the group healing tomorrow. So if you haven't joined in, put your name if you want one. And then I will just walk through and give everybody a little flushing, an energetic flush. And you can add your family members there. That's why it says self and household if you want. If you have somebody that you feel is kind of stuck at home or a little bit dark or picking up negativity or blocked, you could just add them and I could do a little cleansing, a little flush for their system. And again, I'm going to add the notes to the, I'm going to add the chakra cards that I created to the bottom for notes. And if you have questions, please ask. Thank you guys.